We've gone live on
Yes, sir,
Facebook.
we are live. Yes, sir, we are live.
Shall we
You
start?
can start, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Hi, welcome everybody. This is your host Sanjay Gupta for the today's session on solid waste management and the road ahead. We have with us today Nalini Palyam, a veteran in waste management, implementing projects in Bangalore and many other cities. Along with Nalini, we have Swati Sambyal. She has previously worked with the Center for Science and Environment and currently joined UN Habitat. She too has come with extensive experiences in policy, communication, and implementation. She had done projects in Bihar and perhaps other states. Myself, I'm doing projects in Assam, currently my home state. I have worked globally, and I basically hope to bring some changes. We are currently doing 3 projects over here. And with this short introduction, let me also tell you about the platform. This platform known as Anajori and Care Northeast Foundation is basically an idea of Milind Datta, who wants to bring people who are actually into implementation, who want to bring change in Northeast together and see how the shared values and the shared commitments can upscale some of the work that people are doing at a very, very pilot scale or a very minuscule scale with very less possibility of getting upscaled on its own. So the idea is that everybody comes together, shares their ideas, and we help each other to grow. With this, there is also an idea which Milind and the group has done is to develop environmental entrepreneurs. Particularly in Assam, as you may know, there is not much uh, environmental entrepreneurship or social enterprises in here because probably the kind of skill that is required is absent. So this is a platform where we not only try to share our knowledge but also uh, bring people together and try to skill them up with social enterprise and environmental enterprises. And with this short introduction, I first invite Swati to tell us about her journey in solid waste management, the projects she has been doing, and what else the India's waste management system. And if she has any experience of the Northeast, we'll be very happy to hear. Swati, for the next 15 minutes, the platform is yours.
Thanks, Sanjay. 15 minutes is quite long to speak impromptu, but as Sanjay very briefly introduced, hi, I'm Swati, and I have worked extensively in India, South Asia, Global South on solid waste management, plastic waste management at both policy advocacy and implementation level. I was previously associated for about 9 years with Center for Science and Environment, where I was heading the program on waste management. And I think coming straight to the gaps and some of the issues that are there, and because we have I think shortage of time, uh, I think majorly when you look at solid waste management in India, and this becomes even a relevant discussion right now because the survection results have just come, and minutes before we were just talking about how are the results and what the results mean for cities. I feel overall in past 4 5 years, especially after the Swachh Bharat mission that has come, or even when the solid waste management rules that came in 2016. Of course, we arrived late at waste management as cities and as a country as a whole. In 2000, when we had the municipal solid waste and handling rules, and I've worked quite a lot on policy, so I'll address a few of those things first. The main compliance condition under those rules were for every city to have a landfill site in place. So basically, trying to make you understand that the overall perception of solid waste rules earlier was for every municipality to have a piece of land to dump all their waste. And that kind of carried on forward for many, many years until 2016, where in 2013 onwards, we had deliberations on the draft solid waste management rules. And in 2016, the rules for the first time talked about the importance of segregation. They talked about, implementation more so, in the value chain of solid waste, which means you segregate, you sort, you ensure that maximum recycling happens, you ensure that your wet waste gets treated, and it's only your non-recyclable high calorific value fraction that you send for incineration or co-processing, or the fraction which is inert for landfilling. So in 16 years, I think the journey of 16 years kind of went from, non-sustainable waste management to sustainable waste management, especially when you read the policy. But definitely when you jump to the ground, things are very different, especially for municipalities. Because this is more so, I think this discussion is more so relevant to Northeast, and having visited many cities in Northeast as well, I feel municipalities don't really have clarity on thought on how to set up systems on waste management at the first place. Secondly, there is a gap in capacity that is there, like basic understanding of even if there are municipalities who want to set those systems, how do they go about it? And thirdly, the communication and behavior change aspect. How do you bring change? Now, definitely under Swachh Bharat Mission, there have been various verticals, there have been various programs, and a lot of institutions and NGOs have come in to support that. But are interventions happening in a holistic manner? I think that is something we should look into. For instance, Gangtok, of course, is one of the cities that has taken initiatives and lead on dry waste management, which means they've not only gone ahead and looked into banning some components of single-use plastics, but also on the ground, they have worked to some extent on encouraging self-help groups or women-led initiatives to ensure that there is upcycling or, such a number of initiatives that are taking place there. But if we look at other cities and if we kind of look into waste management in other cities, I remember 1.5 years back, I was in Shillong, and of course, I could see that within the city, they had set up good systems, which means visibly they were wet and dry with waste bins that were kept everywhere. But then if you question where is the waste of Shillong going, it was going to a piece of land. Having visited Guwahati, I feel, of course, there are some small, interventions happening at pilot scale in a few wards. But then long-term sustainable interventions wherein you kind of absorb the city as a whole and ensure you set up systems that ensure that segregation happens. There is end-to-end systems that are set up to support segregation. You process the components that have to be processed. And then you only have, what cannot be recycled or processed, you send it to landfill. I think those systems as a whole is what we are missing as a whole. And especially when we question as waste management, I personally feel in respect to various interventions that I have been a part of, it's very easy to set up systems in a city for solid waste management. But the difficult and the most challenging component is behavior change. How do you address that? How do you convince people, say, to start with segregation? How do you convince authorities to set up systems to support segregation? How do you integrate informal sector? How do you address informalities? Because I don't think so we can imagine waste management in our cities without addressing informal sector. And in most of the cities, I think the current trend is to privatize waste management, which to some extent works, but on a larger extent, you can't entirely privatize waste management in India because there is a huge informal stream as well. So you can't really let go of that. You have to ensure that you integrate them in various models, be it on dry waste management or be it for wet waste processing. So that component, I feel sometimes we forget. And as I said, I think the bigger challenge and issue is behavior change. And in the present times, I think one big issue that has arisen is the pandemic, which has, given rise to totally a new stream of waste, which is your PPEs, your gloves and masks, even biomedical waste that is being generated at household level from either quarantine households or isolation centers. So I think amidst all these list of challenges, there is a new challenge that we as municipalities or we as institutions are facing. So how do we kind of look into that? Also ensuring that the sanctity of workers who are at the forefront of it needs to be recognized and needs to be addressed. That is another issue, because if you look at informal workers who have been affected by corona, I feel in Delhi there have been about 40 to 50 sanitation workers who tested positive, and and many lost 15, about 15 or so lost lives. This happened in Mumbai as well. And on top of that, we have a larger issue of crashing waste management systems. So how do you address that? And of course, some wins that we as cities made on plastics. I feel before the pandemic, there were about 18 states and union territories that to some extent had banned different components of plastic, majorly carry bags, but then there were a few states who had gone ahead. Karnataka is one, Tamil Nadu was one, Mumbai was one, that had not just banned plastics, carry bags, but also banned, different one-time disposable items. And these were some big wins for the country, and some very good, interesting case studies were coming up. But I feel after the pandemic, after the corona period, all these initiatives have kind of crashed down. We even observed that states who had taken a leap forward in addressing these issues, they've gone a step back ahead. They've gone a step back because I feel to some extent, the acceptance or belief is that, single-use plastics is kind of more clean and it kind of prevents you from the virus, but that is not the case. So how do we, address these challenges and these myths that have arisen due to the pandemic, and also ensure sustainable waste management, remains? I think these are some of the broader questions. But one thing is clear, that even amidst the pandemic, cities that have practiced sustainable waste management interventions, they have also been cities that were able to sail through this pandemic and that were able to set up systems. And I think a bigger observation is that decentralized in waste management is the need of the hour. When I say decentralization, I don't mean every city has to become decentralized. Of course, for metropolitans, for instance, for Delhi or Bangalore or Mumbai or Calcutta or Chennai, we need hybrid models, which is a mix of centralized and decentralized systems. But for smaller cities, I feel decentralization works perfectly. And I feel today in 2020, India in itself has significant examples of cities doing exemplary work on decentralization. We heard of Ambikapur in Chhattisgarh, which is an entirely women-led initiative. There are about 440 women who manage waste, collect waste, take it to 17 decentralized centers, sort plastics into about 150 components and more. They have an in-house recycling facility. So I feel creation of more in-house strength is the need of the hour, and localized intervention, which encourage segregation, which encourage self-help groups and NGOs and civic bodies and informal sector to collaborate and work together, is the need of the hour. We definitely have seen Kerala's work over the years, wherein they have this Kudumshri model, under which you don't really see informal sector as a whole, because they are very much integrated within Kerala's waste management system. And it's not just in cities, but even in local gram panchayats and even in rural areas that sustainable waste management interventions are practiced. But I feel we don't hear of such interesting examples because, they aren't really spoken about more and more. So I feel the need of the hour is to talk about these interesting case studies. In rural areas in Karnataka, I feel there are significant sustainable systems set up, which kind of focus on segregation, utilization of compost to fields, effective dry waste management, having resource recovery centers or material recovery facilities for urban areas and RRCs for rural areas. So I feel there are enough examples within the country that need to be replicated. And looking into, I think, the third component, which is technology. Our composition decides the technology for waste management, but many a times as municipalities and as authorities, we go the other way around. We decide the technology first, and then we kind of look into, okay, based on that technology, the system of waste management would be set up. I feel Delhi is a classic example for that. We only have 10% of the waste that is incinerable, but there is about 5,600 tons of waste that goes for incineration in the three giant white elephant of waste to energy plants that actually, I don't know. I mean, they aren't even efficient enough. There is about 30 to 40% of water mass, which is again dumped to the dump site, which is creating another problem. So I feel we don't need guzzling white elephants or systems in our cities which temper with sustainable waste management, which encourage mixing of waste so that a lot of waste could be fed into these plants so that they run, and I think this is a highly unsustainable model. And right now, I think Nalini would be able to tell you more about it. Bangalore is battling it, Gurugram is battling it, many cities, even in hilly regions, Northeast and Himachal Pradesh, Bihar, many states are kind of really confused on should they allow such interventions or not. So I feel I'm not against various technologies per se, but I definitely feel that your composition and a thorough assessment of the composition of your waste should decide technology, whether composting or biomethanization should be preferred. And I feel definitely it should be preferred considering 55 to 60% of the stream across cities is biodegradable. We definitely need some interventions for dry waste resource management, which is recyclable. But again, with recyclability comes another aspect on whether you're recycling or you're downcycling. And that's a separate issue altogether. Maybe I could take some questions on that. And then third is having effective technologies in place only once you determine the composition. And I feel here is an area where cities really lack. If you question when was the last inventorization exercise that your city did, I think you won't get those answers. Even the sheets that are filled by municipalities to submit to urban departments or states or even the center, uh, they are filled in a very erroneous manner. So I think we definitely need to improve on-ground inventorization to kind of come to the conclusion that what is the most sustainable technology that cities can adopt. And I think last but not the least, behavior change, because nothing can happen if you're convinced that why are you segregating and why my segregated waste would be valuable, for the further value chain ahead. So I feel as citizens, as residents, and as implementers, the focus should be on creating, a value chain in waste management which supports segregation end to end. And in my opinion, that's the biggest hurdle today. I mean, I feel cities have funds to channelize it for infrastructure and to channelize it for buying vehicles and endless number of equipments that they go for. But the real work is addressing behavior change. Over to you, Sanjay. Thanks.
Thanks, Swati. Thanks a lot. Uh, Two, three very important questions. One that you talked about the informal sector. The second, talking about the good case studies that is there all around the country. I remember in a very recent conference, they were talking about zero waste models. And one of the participants asked why you're not talking about Titabar model. This small town, around 32,000 of population, has gone to zero organic waste disposal, and which is quite commendable. And it has happened because of a very, very active uh, chairperson, Rajiv Datta, and a very good IAS officer, Ayush Garg. These two, and with some help from me, they designed the system and they made it work. And it is strange because when the system started, they didn't even know about solid waste rules. So we are talking about municipalities awareness on rules and regulations and implementations. And here is a city where proactiveness of just couple of people can lead from zero to hero kind of situation. And it is still there. It is still, I would say personally, it is the best project in Assam in terms of if you look at door-to-door collection.
Sanjay, can you unmute yourself? I can't hear you.
Is that fine now?
Yes, yes, yeah. Yes.
So quite a many things that has happened. And strangely, obviously, Titabar doesn't figure in the Assam Swachh Sarvekshan list. So people are really bugged. And on the another way, so one is the integration of the informal sector, the good case studies, and the behavior change. Nalini has done exemplary work in Bangalore and many other places, even when she was in Pune. So let's hear from Nalini what she has to say on these aspects. And Priyanshu, Nalini wants to share some of the PPTs, some of the pictures to make it more illustrative. So kindly allow her screen.
Yes, sir.
Nalini, now the floor is yours, and I hope that you will address some of these questions.
Yes. So just to continue what Sanjay was saying, it is so important. One IAS officer can make the change that in a city, in a mega city like Bangalore. Also, we have experienced that. In a smaller city like Pune, where I have worked, I have experience. So it is solid waste management is not really a rocket science. It is all about the governance and political will. That's time and again that's been proved to us. So I just want to share a PPT, not for going through the PPT, but more for you to see and set a context and look how what are the things that we are doing. So I got into waste because of waste pickers. So I have to confess right in the beginning that I'm in waste more in terms of because of the livelihoods. So when I come from the livelihood angle, it is way different from when you look at it just as solid waste management. But both the things can be easily, kind of connected because it's a natural connection. The previous speaker was just saying that you can't talk about waste without waste pickers, and that's what I feel. So I'm going to tell you a story of a mega city like Bangalore, where the integration of waste pickers have happened. And Pune is another city where we worked, and we really worked well there. And 2010, when I moved to Bangalore, and this is my home city. I studied here, lived here, and all my childhood was here. And after 25 years, I came back to Bangalore. And of course, when I came, I really felt that things are not moving and I need to work. So we started organizing waste pickers. We think there are 35,000 waste pickers then, and now little less than before, but I'll tell you why later. We just started working with them because in 2010, we knew in another 10 years, there will be no waste on the street. That was our dream also, that everybody, we have an efficient system where collection happens. Waste pickers, you see, where the inefficiency of the city is high, there you see more waste pickers, and they're filling the gap for the inefficiencies. And we really wanted to integrate them into the solid waste management. So we studied and showed the government that 1,050 tons of waste is recycled every day without the intervention of the government or investment by the government. This is done because of the Of course, waste pickers do it for their livelihood, but the side effect, which is very positive, is their work is negative carbon footprints. Recently, that study has shown. And also, we shown them that 84 crore rupees is saved for the city. And then we went back to them and said, hey, what are you doing for them? So they asked, what do you want to do? So we said, first, you give us an identity card, accept that we are in the city. So in 2011, the identity cards were given with the logo of the city and signature of the commissioner. This was the first city to do that. In Pune, we had a union card on which it was endorsed. But here, the data was in BBMP, that is BBMP is our local government. BBMP's, kind of data, they owned it up and they spent money to recognize them and gave them. So, and now of course it's a law. 2016, it's become a law. Everybody has to do. So a lot of experience of Bangalore has gone into 2016 legislation. And because we were fighting in the court with the PIL, because we were not happy, the citizens were not happy with the services we were getting. And so we said it has to be decentralized waste management, at least the dry waste, that is your paper, plastic, all that inorganic waste, and also the leaf litter. Bangalore is a city of trees and gardens. So the street litter that you get in the leaf litter you get on the street, that should not leave the ward. That was one of the principal thing on which we fought. As Swati said, many things we will not be able to do it at a decentralized level in a mega city like Bangalore or many other places, but there are some things that you can do it. So we said minimum the street, the dry waste, and also and also for wet waste, the dry waste and this leaf litter should be managed within the place. And also there are a lot of legislation that has come that they are, to the extent possible, they also are managing their wet waste within the wards. And where it is not possible, where it's thickly populated, old city, there the other services can be looked at. So when we started telling the commissioner, we have 198 wards, and we said we need 198 DWCC, and he laughed at us and said, where is the space in Bangalore? But because Bangalore is a growing city, it is a capital city, it's attracting a lot of foreign investment, so there is a lot of value for the land. So we said, no, sir, there is land. It is a question of whether you want to dedicate that to the DWC, the Dry Waste Collection Center. Today we have 141. So where there was none, and today we have reached 141. We are quite happy with that, but continues to work on bettering the system. So Dry Waste Collection Center, we said, okay, the city will give us the land and infrastructure, and corporates will come with their CSR money to support it as a gap funding, and informal sector will run it. So in this particular situation, the city kept up its promise. We kept up with our promise of running it, but no corporate came. So it was in 2011, probably people didn't believe that a function like this could happen in the city. So we went back to the city and said, nobody's coming up. So you give us the basic thing like the weighing scale and, the basic stuff, and the informal sector will, take loan from the city, and I mean, from their own, their own resources, and then we'll come and run it. And that's how we started. So 2011 it started, we showed that, and we engaged the citizen a lot. That is very key. If you don't segregate waste at source, the quality of waste you get is bad, and the condition of working for the workers is also bad. So we really worked with the Resident Welfare Association. I remember 2 years, in the beginning, first 2 years, I didn't even take one Sunday because we were going and, creating awareness in different places. Today, I don't go for even one, because we have 2,000 such citizens who go and do it. It is, and awareness and segregation, importance of segregation is never ending. You have to continue to do, but you have to see how you can use the influencers in your city to do it. And dry waste collection center, we showed how to do. Then we said, you know, how much ever we are doing, the dry waste collection center is getting all mixed waste, in the sense of Paura Karmikas or the sanitation workers were pulling it out from the mixed waste and giving. It was not a good scene. So in 2 areas, with the help of citizens, we started something called Donate Dry Waste. So we asked people to donate dry waste. At that time, we couldn't collect it because it was already given to a contractor. Legally, it was not possible. So, but if I donate, I can donate my waste to anywhere else, you know, I mean, for whomever I want. So we took that thing and we did it in about 2,000 households in one area, 3,500 in another. And the citizens started seeing that there is less waste on the street corner. There is no black spots. People were willing to hold. We were collecting it once a week, not every day. So even small houses, big houses, everywhere we demonstrated that people can hold dry waste. And one of the things that we realized that when you hold the waste at home, you tend to keep it clean, wash it, then dry it and put it. So that was better for recycling. That was better working condition at the dry waste collection center. So today we started working and 32 centers are run by, and we are supporting them. And city has made an MOU directly in the name of Waste Pickers, which is the first city and probably the only city which does it. We are there in the MOU as a third party to support the whole process, and a lot of 14 women are also running it now. And so we also work a lot on the social security of Waste Pickers, and some of you who are on the call who have already seen our work. And the new thing that we have done is using the debris, the waste material from the construction industry to upgrade the houses, public houses. What happens is, in a city like Bangalore, every now and then you see a lot of people changing their homes, changing their kitchen, there's upgrading, and all good material. So one of our sister organization in Pune had tried this and had tried it, buying it from the second-hand market. But what we did was ask for donation. And we said, you please get it, and we'll get the donation and actually do the housing. So so because there is already construction debris and already there is a need, we thought we'll try to do some kind of you know, mix and match of this. And it's like it was a great opportunity. People can get the houses upgraded at 30% or 40% less than the market rate when you use the virgin material. And also we have used some of the bricks, for example, fly ash bricks, and a 6-month study we did to see whether you know, fly ash bricks actually make any impact on the temperature inside the household. And it has proved to be true that it reduces the temperature. So many of the design facts were also seen. So on the left side, you can see that was the old house. On the right side, you can see on the new house, everything, the tile and the and it was also a scrap dealer's house. So for years he had collected his the steel. So 90% of the steel requirement for this house came from there. And so it can hold about 12 people comfortably. And everything we did the exercises with them, the first thing they said is, we want water storage. That is the key. And even in the small house on the left side, you can see where Devraj is standing there, most of the space was used for drums of water. So we wanted to change that, and we gave a sump on the ground floor. And this has a his electricity bill has come down by almost 70%, because he uses the you know, Selco supported us in designing, and also some funding to do this. And he is paying back the money. He is not taking anything free. What he needs is a facility where he can pay with less interest. And we have also used, so it is really, we call it Hasiru Mane. Hasiru Mane means greenhouse. It is literally looking at how energy consumption can be reduced. The water can be, there is also a rainwater harvesting here. We didn't have it in the beginning, but later we did it. So what he does is a large, tank is there where the water flows down, and he has kept that whole water, very nice, clean water, to the community. So he's sharing it with the community. So this is what I would really would like to tell you is. The Bangalore city's our contribution is the three-way segregation. Sanitary waste is collected separately, and we created a system called 2 bin 1 bag. That was a suggestion by one of the citizen, and citizen grew, and we actually did that, and it's a very easy method to for even people who collect waste. It's very easy, who don't read and write, and the red bag, red means it's a sanitary waste and they shouldn't touch it. On the right side, what you're seeing, we implemented the same thing in Jamshedpur. As I said, this is all not a rocket science. It is just a governance. What we have done in Bangalore efficiently is done in by JISCO in Jamshedpur, where more than 200 women, and mostly women, waste pickers have been integrated into the system, and they're doing extremely well. So this is a replicable model, and we have shown dry waste collection center is very efficient. So today, all cities of Karnataka has dry waste collection centers, and there is a budget allocated by the state government for the dry waste collection center. And we also work on the work, and of course there is a lot of work that was done during the COVID relief work, and there also we really worked on improving the conditions of work, because we are essential workers. So we continued our work, and we did a lot of adjustment to address the COVID issues. And some of our women have filmed the challenges of the masks that people throw, and that has been picked up by the government to do as a IEC activity in the city. And what I would like to say is the city has embraced waste pickers. Today, if any big company comes and tells the city, we want to collect all your dry waste, they say, what will happen to the informal sector? Do you include them? So we don't have to be there at the table to do it. They are doing it. And Georgina is on this call, and when Alliance of Indian Waste Pickers had come to our office and we were doing a training, our commissioner just walked in, and we had just said that we are all going to be here, and he just walked in. Everybody was surprised to see him, because it's a big city. A commissioner walking in without a major invitation to see waste pickers was a huge thing for people who came there. So when that commissioner left, the new mayor said, no, we don't want to do this. We want to get Indore model. So they brought people from Indore. So they wanted to invest a lot on Indore model. His collection system is very good, but it's extremely expensive on a long term. How you can manage that, and waste pickers are also thrown out of that system, which we did not want, and many citizens didn't want that model. But anyway, now the old commissioner has come back during the COVID time. So he has brought back all the things, and now we are in a process of where they have said all dry waste in the city will be collected only by dry waste collection center operators. That could be SHGs or waste pickers, and now a huge responsibility on us to show that it is possible. And I know that it will be possible. We have shown in 33 thing, and we can scale it up. So once, hopefully next year, I'll be telling the story of amazing citywide dry waste collections by the waste pickers. So it is important that your policies talk about it. Our we have recently passed the bylaws. It's quite very, very good, and includes waste pickers. And of course, there is an opportunity for others to come also. So we are not very, it's not, proof of what including waste pickers at all. But definitely there is a huge thing about dry waste collection center has to be run by only waste pickers, which is the greatest thing. If the city citizens, I owe that the whole effort that has happened in Bangalore is because, of course, waste pickers showed the demonstration, but really citizens believed in our model. citizens participated in our model. They were willing to change the thing of segregation of waste. They were willing to work with waste pickers. For example, in one of the interviews in a magazine, I just said, oh, will you invite waste pickers to your home for a cup of tea? And yes, next day we got an invite by one of the citizens saying that I want to throw a dinner for all the waste pickers who work in our area. So she welcomed them to their home. So these kind of social stigmas that are there, that is also breaking. And for waste pickers, it's a better working condition, ergonomically much better. Whether it is perfect, it is not. We have to work a long way, but there is a lot of opportunity for us, and I'm so happy that this happened. When we started in 2010, I never dreamt of door-to-door collection will come to waste pickers. It has grown organically, and we want to prove it. If we don't prove it, then it's a disaster for the country because a model has failed. So we really are working at making sure this happens. So the governance is very key. Political will is very key. Only then a solid waste management can happen at a sustainable manner. So I'll stop here. Thank you, for sharing. But I don't have much experience in Northeast, and only connection I have is the waste pickers in with Georgina has brought them, and they are doing composting, and I'm very happy with them. They have come, spent a lot of time in Bangalore to understand our model. I hope it will be replicated there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nalini. The question of the informal sector has always been key to our work. I mean, since I started working in 2000, it has been a key, both in terms of recycling and integration with the larger system. Quite one question that I would really like to understand, which you commented about Vindor, which again stood first this year too in the cleanest cities list. Why, if you've understood, feel free to say no. Why is Indore so negative about integration of the waste? Because there's large. I have personally gone there, seen it. It's the same story I see in Surat, I see in Bhopal, I see in Indore, which happens to be the top 5 cities in terms of the cleanest cities. But if you look at the integration of the waste pickers, it's not there in all these 3 cities. And what needs to be done? I'll come back to the question on the North a little later on, but this is, I think, very interesting to hear from.
So I have gone to Indore many times and spent a lot of time with the waste pickers and people who designed this whole thing. So one of the things is, if you just see their door-to-door collection, there's an assumption that waste pickers will be dirty, they will not be disciplined, they can't pick up, and they won't come on time. See, any change of your, a profession, you need time to change, right? So you have to really work with the waste picker to make the change happen. It happened in Bangalore. Bangalore, when there is a meeting, for example, if a waste picker is late, if by after 15 minutes, anybody, it's just not the waste picker, just not waste picker, it could be me, anybody walking late to the meeting, we all pay 50 rupees fine. So there are different ways of training waste picker to accept this discipline. So they did not make much effort because they wanted to do. If you just see, for lack of other expression, I'm saying there's a racial profiling of the collector in Indore. They have looked at boys, young boys, certain complexion, certain height are collected. You just observe, if you observe the labor involved in collection, you will know that there's a kind of profiling that was done, and the waste pickers don't fit in there. The second thing is also, they also said, oh, we are giving lot of scrap dealers, which is our, kind of supply chain for the recycling industry or downcycling industry, have disappeared from there. Lot of street vendors have disappeared from there. The houses, I'll tell you the story where in Indore, there is a huge community. I've been going to Indore for last, I think about 10 years now. And there's a huge population of Marathi speaking people. And that particular, slum was next to waterways and near the water. And there they had actually wanted to do single toilets, and the money was paid, part money was paid by the people, and another 15,000 was supposed to be paid by the government and fix the toilets for each of the houses. So they had dug up the places for the toilet. It was a pit toilet they had dug up, but suddenly the first survection was coming. So they waste pickers who have paid money, they have the receipts to show that they have paid money for digging the, making the toilets. They came suddenly and said, no, today we are bulldozing, you all have to leave this area. They cleaned up the place. They made a beautiful garden on that, and they got the first prize. So when all these issues were there, and last year our mayor was very keen to get Indore model to Bangalore, we brought all these stories to our citizens in Bangalore, and they said, we have heart, we don't want to be number one. So, but these stories are very, very, very little known. But if you look at the collection system is great. No questions about it. But still, it is not enough. Today, they are collecting wet and dry separately. They say that 100% segregation is there. It could be there. I'm not disputing that. But the thing is, the amount of waste, dry waste, is not collection is not enough. See, Indore model, you can't do it in Bangalore. The consumption pattern is very different. The kind of vehicles they wanted to put, we had already gone ahead and done twice a week collection. People are doing it quite well. Suddenly the Indore model came and they said, no, every day we want to collect. There's so much confusion also in the whole thing. Look at the costing. When you look at the costing of Indore model, that can run only when you get number one and you have a lot of funding. Finances are available for you. It cannot be, if the finance is taken out, what will you do? So there are some good things that have happened in Indore that can be used. For example, all the sweeping machines that they have taken second hand from different countries, which is they say it is much more less cost than doing the new one. There are biogas was a nice thing, but I recently heard biogas is also not working. So these are the stories you will never get to hear. Our DW, I don't know if I get into trouble by saying this, our BBMP officials have been trying to go and see their caping. They were not invited. They kept asking them. Our Green Tribunal guys are saying, you go and see. They were not invited. They said, we'll give it to you later. We'll give you the thing. Just before survection, they said, yes, come and see. So that means that there was something that was happening, that it was not happening, and they fixed it and they invited. So who will tell these stories? The stories of negative things that have happened there. There is an issue of smell and everything has come up from there. So nobody wants to talk about it. And today we have some of the activists, when you talk to them, they have, what do you call them? The guys who manage all these bars, boulders or whatever, I forget. They have hired a lot of people from Valmiki community itself, who will stand there and does not allow any kind of public dissent about the system. So there are a lot of things that are put into place. They have played cultural tactics. And in Indore, if you go, every wall is about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Nothing about the local, nothing about local tradition, nothing about natural markets. There are some things definitely, as I said, the cow gully or the street vending in the food vending, they've done a good job of how they have managed that. So there are something good, something bad, but overall the cost of this model is very, very expensive, and the cost for the poor in that city and waste picker, especially waste pickers, has been really unfortunate. So that model, if they can figure out a way to integrate waste pickers, is something that will be that everybody will be happy to explore. And you can see Jamshedpur, it is as clean as Indore, and the collection system is as good as Indore, and waste pickers have been completely integrated. So you have to look at beyond the ranking, I feel. There are Bangalore has such phenomenal experiences of zero waste models in certain wards, so that can be highlighted. it's not, this is a mega city, you will never get number one, because it's the complexity of the whole thing. And I'm sure many of you have seen Bangalore, and Swati has also visited. There are a lot of pockets that very good things are happening, but however, we have failed in replicating this in rest of the city because of governance issue, nothing else. Thanks. Sorry, it was a long answer.
No, it was a very good answer. I think this is necessary to understand. It's the same story right now going in Assam, that why Titawar doesn't figure, or Tinsukia doesn't figure, or X, Y, and Z doesn't figure. And I personally know that they have done much better than the cities that actually figure in the top 10 in Assam. And it becomes extremely difficult to tell people that no, we didn't figure out because the Swachh Sarvekshan has a kind of criteria which is not good. But people simply, because everybody can't visit Karimganj and Hailakandi and Lakhimpur, who are really not up to the mark of the cities in which they are being compared. But it becomes very difficult. But luckily, because of the social media, when people have started trolling Karimganj commissioner, the truth is becoming more evident. Okay, we are not that bad. They just got because of certain reasons, as you say, and that they figure out in the sustainable space. One thing, Nalini and to Swati, what is the kind of ecosystem in which this kind of models can flourish, becomes easier both in terms of policy advocacy or advocacy, communication, and behavior change? I've been struggling with several of the cities when I propose certain things, and since these experiences are not there in Assam and Northeast, there is always a no, this will not happen. The first reaction of a commissioner, of an executive officer, of the mayor is no, this will not happen. So what kind of ecosystem can be created, communication can be done, and the behavior change can be brought in? What are those ways that we'd like to hear? Most of the participants, both on the FB and on this platform, are from Northeast, so I'm asking a very specific. Nalini and then Swati.
Okay. I think the need should come from the people. So it should become a citizen movement demanding for better services. As I said in the beginning, I said, our commissioner said, in Bangalore, how do you get 164? I mean, 198 watts DWCC, it's not possible. That will be the response from most of the bureaucrats, because I feel that their experience on the field is not as much as you and me who have trust. And you need some people to show the demonstration at the city level. So nobody is better than the citizens, and citizen including people who consume a lot of waste and create a lot of waste, and people who are working in waste. It is both citizens, the citizens who are providing the services, citizens who are creating the waste. And so it has to become a people's movement. Only when you demand, you will get it. As I said, this is not a rocket science, and it's possible. And we'll be happy to we have a group called Solid Waste Management Roundtable. We are mentoring a lot of citizens across the city, across the country, who wants to champion waste causes. And this year in some of the survection, 2 of them have got awards also. So many cities, we have a thing called PAN SWMRT group, where they ask questions, and it's not necessary SWMRT people will answer. Now there are so many people who are doing well, and everybody will answer now. So that is very important. And also creating entrepreneurship within this. When we started, we didn't have many people who can provide home composting, for example. We created those kind of places where the entrepreneurs can come in as service providers. So it is all that will make it happen, and it's really possible to do. Swati.
Yes, I think I have somewhat similar views to what Nandini shared, but I think for any kind of interventions to happen on the ground, you need both administrative as well as political will also to go hand in hand, because many a times those are the bigger conflicts. Maybe if people want change and there is an active citizen movement in cities, or there are even active NGO groups, probably they don't have a direction because either the authorities aren't interested, as Sanjay you highlighted, the commissioner isn't that forthcoming, or even at the urban department level, the officials or the secretaries are not interested. So I feel, of course, both people's will and participation, political and administrative will, also have to go hand in hand, because in a lot of examples we've seen that a good administrator can really change the scape of the city by not only involving citizens but other active groups, within the paradigm of waste management. And I think this comes from the work in Bihar, wherein, we had a very active urban department authority, and it was the secretary who wanted some interventions on the ground. And they had requested us to pick a city in Bihar. And then when we moved on to the city, um, you know, one major issue is that in a 2 or 3 years, there are 4 or 5 commissioners that will change within the city. So how do you convince them over a period of time? Because projects don't happen in years. They take about 2 or 3 years to mature and, achieve sustainability and then become stable enough to carry forward. So one, of course, is the timeline. And in that timeline, how many commissioners are coming and going within the city? And then how do you kind of address various issues to them? So I feel one definitely is keeping checks both top down and bottom up is important. Sometimes, a city would operate well if you pressurize the state urban department to, have more like a carrot and stick model where you push them for better results. Sometimes it's the administration itself that is quite self-sufficient to carry things forward in the ground. For instance, in Panji right now, we have an ex-commissioner who basically had set up the Panji's model, and now he's back and he's doing all the things that he wanted to carry forward. And now Panaji is moving more so with zero waste concepts. But then it was this commissioner who had brought all this change and who kind of, changed offices, went to different places, and now has come back again. So I feel this issue does not has a single answer. It has a multifold answer. And I feel sometimes even the political will within the state works. I feel what has happened in Chhattisgarh, sometimes it's within the city, what able commissioners are able to take forward. And many a times it's a combination of all the things, both citizen participation, municipality, as well as the support of the urban department. So I feel first is you kind of address which situation you are in and then go about it. But of course, continuously engaging with authorities, if they're not convinced that, well, I absolutely agree that many commissioners or many authorities don't buy the fact that decentralization is possible or setting up sustainable, inclusive systems is possible. But then there is the time where you kind of bring other partners up, bring people like Nalini up or other stakeholders up who have actually done work on change, bring other city authorities up and actually, make them sit with the authority of your city face to face and tell them, well, this is happening in that part of the country and here and there, and why can't we do this in our city? So I think this is something that I've personally tried in Bihar, like for 3-4 years, and it did work. More so in a way that became the model that we kind of had set up, became a model for over 120 ULBs to kind of, carry forward, but also sealing the state's urban strategy on solid waste or plastic waste or waste. So I feel all this work has to happen on many levels. It's not just implementation, but advocacy, behavior change, policy change. And it's only when you address all these issues, you're able to stabilize something, that is happening. Yeah. So that's from my side.
One of the very recent things that I have heard from many municipalities, and not just the Northeast, but across the India, is the procurement. And I had a chance to see firsthand, not just in Tinsukia, but also in West Bengal, that they are buying stuff which the municipality doesn't need, whether it is a kind of vehicle that they are trying to buy, for example, compactors, or a recent barrel kind of composting where you need a 5 HP motor to run it. So the total amount of compost that machine will produce will be probably not sold at the price of which the energy bill will come. How do you see the autonomy of the municipality being eroded through a centralized system of procurement, thus getting into the or curtailing into the autonomy of the municipality? Because a lot of municipality now really don't want to use the machines being sent by the centralized system, whether from Delhi or from Guwahati or respective state capitals. I see this is a gradual trend that let's procure centrally and give it to the municipality, while the municipality really doesn't need. In Tinsukia, they've sent 3 barrels, large, one each costing 6 lakh, which you can never use for compost. The same story with a cesspool and a compactor in Jagrura. The same story I saw in trying to set up a waste to energy plant in Siliguri, in West Bengal. They won't be able to manage. So how do you see this tussle between the autonomy of the municipality under the 74th amendment and the state as a supporter, financial supporter of the municipality? This is a big tussle that is going. If you can throw both of them, you can throw some light on that.
Sati, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think there shouldn't be any autonomy in terms of procurement. This definitely has to be municipalities. Municipality has to be the decision-making authority here, and I don't kind of favor a centralized approach here, because every city, even within the state, they have different issues, they have different topographies, they have different challenges. So definitely a centralized intervention here will not help. Procurement should definitely be decentralized. I think here, even the tendering procedures, Sanjay, I would like to bring in, they have to be streamlined. I mean, most of the tender documents, if you review them, they're quite shady. And there's a lot of scope of corruption that happens there. So I feel one is decentralization of procurement, and secondly, ensuring that tender documents give clear guidelines and there is no scope of various parties to earn. I mean, most of the times tendering procedures also are leakages of other people within administration and cities to earn money. Sorry to say that, but that happens on the ground. So I feel, how do you even streamline and strengthen tender documents is the need of the hour, and we need to have some standardized tender documents in place at urban department level or at central level for other cities to kind of take note. These are the two areas, but definitely procurement has to be decentralized. It makes no sense for any city to go in for it in a centralized fashion. Particularly after SBM, what happens is that they have to procure via the GEM portal. And even within the portal, there are a lot of issues. Many a times you kind of put your application as a city, and of course the state urban department has to approve. If it is beyond a particular, if it's beyond a particular threshold, then the state urban department has to approve it. But then in spite of that, there are leakages. Vendor starts approaching municipalities, even beyond the GEM portal paradigm. So I feel there are a lot of leakages within the system that have to be addressed. And that can only happen once you streamline and strengthen the tendering process within municipality administration. I think that's another area of work that requires a lot of action and is quite weak presently. Yeah, over to you, Nalini.
So I agree with what Swati has said, and finally, it is a subject of the city. Solid waste management, so they should have more say in it. Tendering documents, we have worked a lot on tendering documents through courts and everything. And last year we did a tender. The city has done a tender. I can't say we, as in Hasrudala did a tender, where wet and dry are separate streams that will be collected. Dry will be collected by waste pickers and wet through the contractor. So it had very, very little money. So the new political regime came and they fought and they brought it back. And of course, now again back to old thing, because our commissioner was very commissioner came back and he was very strong about it. So the whole process of tendering also, this L1 is is really not a good way of doing it. When you do L1, everybody wants to quote as little as possible. And when you even know that that L1 will not be enough to provide the services, we go with L1. So the whole procedure itself is flawed, and we have to look at it in a newer kind of a thing. So a city like Bangalore, for example, it also has smart city. We have, I don't think they have gone for so much of procurement centrally, except for probably vehicles and stuff like that. And they still are able to procure locally also. So it's a combination of the two that they are doing. And procurement is a very, very interesting thing. I feel that people wanted to bring Indore model to Bangalore because they could buy 500 new vehicles. And we kept saying, look at the size of Indore and all centralized system. So in Indore, you might go for 20 kilometers and you will get the large processing plant. In Bangalore, you have to go almost 60-80 kilometers, right? And the amount of driveways that is created in Bangalore is way more than what per capita you see in Indore. So that kind of vehicles will not work. So because there was a procurement of so many vehicles, that is another interest why they wanted to do. So procurement needs a lot of work together. And today in waste it is 100 crore, 1000 crore budget for the city. So it's a very interesting area for a lot of people to work in for the procurement and not necessarily on the ground thing. The day that solid waste management becomes cheaper to manage, you'll have less corruption and less procurement issue, I feel.
Participants, the floor is open for questions. So if anybody has question, you can unmute your mic and ask directly, or you can also write your question in the chat box.
Okay, I don't have a question, but it's just a comment. Can I just come in?
Yeah, please.
Sanjay?
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, hello, Swati. Hi, Nalini. This is Meenakshi here, and I am a researcher by profession. I don't have much knowledge on solid waste management per se, but I have a bit of experience as far as SBM. I've worked a little bit on Swachh Bharat Rural through UNICEF programs, some of the UNICEF programs actually. So I do not have a question per se, but it's more like a comment. You've kind of touched upon it. So, while you've also mentioned that this whole top-down, bottom-up, both are important as approaches, but I also sometimes feel that most of these programs or various schemes under the government, don't you think it also becomes more of a target-driven approach? Because most of the time, I also closely work with tea garden communities. So most of the time when we visit a lot of these communities, it's we feel that there's a huge disjunct between what is being promoted in the name of hygiene, because I work on water sanitation and hygiene, and in terms of the ground realities and what is actually being practiced. So as far as SBM is concerned, I have visited districts where this whole thing becomes a target-driven approach in terms of like, okay, if these many number of toilets are being constructed, then we declare a certain district to be ODF, open defecation free district. But in reality, when we go and actually visit these communities, we would see that the toilet is actually being used as a storeroom, So, I don't know, this is not necessarily a question, but I somehow feel like this is also, it makes us realize that, we really need to work on ground, that there needs to be a serious level of multi-stakeholder meet and convergence of all these efforts. But it's also very demotivating at some level as people, working on ground. So I just, it was just a thought I wanted to share, if you would like to add to that. Thank you.
Thanks. Swati or Nalini, do you think you can answer this?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Meenakshi. I think I absolutely agree with you that many a times the focus is more on numbers, how many vis-a-vis toilets constructed or achieving ODF or ODF plus status, and not on whether that change has happened in real time. And I think I have personally seen it's especially with the toilet construction mission that it's majorly limited to constructing, but then how do you ensure that the actual behavior change has happened, or people actually using the toilet? Most of the times that it is used as a storeroom. But I feel, here implementation definitely plays a part. I feel the work not has to be limited to constructing, but also monitoring for a prolonged period till it becomes a habit. And in most of the cases that is not happening, and that's why these projects kind of falter then over a period of time. So I think both for sanitation or solid waste management, you can't make change in a year, and that's why I had said it earlier. There could be various models, top down, bottom up, an NGO leading, or a citizen movement, or an administration led initiative. The models are different, and presently in the country there are all these kinds of models that exist, and that's why I highlighted it. But definitely for a project to stabilize, I think there should be a minimum 3-year timeline that has to be there, and there has to be a regular benchmarking and monitoring of targets. One could be construction. Secondly, definitely has to be behavior change and prolonged behavior change. Not that you've constructed the toilet and you have just visualized that yes, people are using it, but it has to become their habit over a period of time. So those assessments should happen, and I do feel that all these surveillance assessments, they should really keep all these parameters also into perspective. Presently it's not there. Yeah.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you so much.
Nalini, do you have to comment on it?
No, I think Swati has answered.
Okay. Anybody else with their questions? Welcome.
Hi, this is Pooja here. Can I come in?
Please.
Yeah. Hello, Swati and Nandini. My question, and I am trying to extend a point what Meenakshi have put forward. The first of it is seeing from the urban space and rural space. In urban space, I have worked with Milind for some time with government. We did a lot of I won't say activism, but we tried to poke around and make that active engagement with civil society organization and government. The thing is that we started around 2013 or so, but there were few visible change in the sense that garbage bins which were on road from city space, this was taken out, and NGOs and designated organizations started doing a lot of those door-to-door pickup. My point here is that initially there was a lot of sensitization of wet garbage and dry garbage, how they should be done, and a lot of publicity was done. My problem till date is that at least in my house, the segregation was done, but the transportation in which they pick, they mix it together. So when I, out of curiosity, asked them, they said hame to nahi malum, they just do it. I might be wrong, maybe it's a condition in my area or something like that. I don't see any kind of social audit happening in Guwahati city. Maybe Sanjay can enlighten me in this term. And when we talk about rural spaces, it's they in sense of sustainable practice, the kitchen waste that is being produced, they do a lot of composing. But when you see the use of plastic, they have very unhealthy practices, like, burning it to, lit a fire for, or, just dumping and lighting and everything fire. When we talk, it's like, this is the best source of burning up the waste, and they don't have any kind of waste management in rural per se in terms of plastic goods. That is one thing I'm thinking about. And another question is sanitary pad. Like maybe Sanjay can tell about it. In Assam, have you seen, like, beside incinerator being in school, are there any practices or special initiative have been taken to cater to this solid waste management problem? Thank you.
Let Swati and Nalini respond. They are our speakers today, and then I will respond what is there in Assam with the sanitary pads.
Okay, see, this is how it starts. I segregate at home, but the sanitation workers mix it and take it. So this is a story we heard from almost everybody, but we kept telling them, you have a dry waste collection center, you can drop dry waste if you want. Just because somebody else is not doing your work properly, you don't stop it. So that perseverance, when you are doing it and seeing it's mixed, you will one day get up and ask questions. And the second thing I really want to tell you is citizen activism also has a limitation, and they have to put limits to themselves also. Sometimes people get so carried away and start ordering the bureaucrats what they are supposed to do. That is not the way the citizen activism should also work. I don't know in your case it has happened, but I'm just saying that is my experience. So working with them, they also have a lot of kind of good solutions, and you have to appreciate some of the challenges they have and look at how you can solve it. So so it should be and persistence. You have to keep doing it. You have to be at it and at it. 10 years, 3 times they said, okay, they'll give it to waste picker, they will not give it to waste picker, they will give it to waste picker. This goes on. So you have to like kind of continuously work at it. And with sanitary thing, I don't know what is happening in Guwahati, but there's a huge movement in Bangalore about talking about sustainable menstrual hygiene products. So there is we use it in rural areas also. Rural areas, what happens, there's little bit of money, and we show how to do it. And we have done it in a lot of rural areas also. I mean, smaller gram panchayat. Then the panchayat actually become a model. Other gram panchayat come and see, they become very proud and they start doing it. So gram panchayat, the problem is of the budget. There is not enough budget to even do door-to-door collection. So then it becomes a problem. In one of the places that we work, the major problem, there was so much of animal and people's conflict, because the sort of slaughterhouses, they would just throw the waste out, so the dogs were coming. So dogs were really become a problem there. All that we did was just streamline the collection of non-veg slaughter waste separately and do the deep burying method. So in this, what happened, we didn't have any facility there. So we had one big JCB. We had broken down half done building of a community building. We just took those two and showed them how to do the thing. And this 2 bin 1 bag has worked for us in smaller city, bigger city, smaller village, and at Gram Panchayat. It has beautifully worked for us as a segregation thing. In Gram, I'm saying in villages, you can set up 80% segregation within like 2 weeks. It is possible to do. There are many, many ways to do it. But sustainability of it is a challenge because they don't have enough funds. That's all I want.
Swati,
I
any
think,
experience with sanitary pads?
Yeah, adding on, thanks Sumedha for Pooja, sorry. Thanks Pooja for the question. I feel, I mean, segregation is desirable and everyone wants it, and often considered not favorable because of the systems that we've had in our country over so many years. And there is a vested interest in ensuring that the waste is mixed, honestly. which is that the contractors and people who are there in the waste value chain, they get more money if you don't segregate it and mix it because of the tipping fee issue. So I feel the tipping fee here has to be more on processing and not on collection and transportation and disposal. And that has to change across cities, also in the Northeast region, where I feel a lot of this work has not happened. Secondly, when you segregate, I feel now our new normal should be three-way segregation. It's not wet and dry. It's always been wet, dry, and domestic hazardous waste. But somehow in all the promotions that happen on segregation, the third component has been totally missed. And I think it has become even more important in the times that we are living in today, in the time of a pandemic, that we have to normalize that India has a three-way source segregation, not two-way at all. So yeah, I think these two are my major interjections. That one is that, there's always been a vested interest in mixing waste because of the money laundering issue with waste. And I feel that is a separate subtopic to be discussed. So definitely the tipping fees and the contracts that are signed with concessionaires on taking waste and disposing it, those have to change. The modality and focus has to be on, ensuring that this waste is maintained segregated end to end, processed in a segregated fashion, disposed in a segregated fashion. So I feel we need to have all those clauses within the contract agreement that a private company signs with the municipality. If it not changes, I think that's how private companies understand waste management as, that you pick up waste, you compact it, and you dispose it, in some other corner, which definitely has to change. Yeah, thanks.
Pooja, as far as sanitary pads are concerned, I don't see in the entire Northeast anything being set up specifically for that. It is being dumped. We have tried at some places basically burning in a closed environment, which is controversial. Some people say it's good, but some people say it's better than what we are doing. So it may not be good, but it is not as bad as mixing it and open burning. More recently, we are in talks with a couple of companies who supply kind of small incinerators where sanitary pads and a small domestic hazardous biomedical waste could be incinerated in a safe manner. Apparently, it is approved by the Assam Pollution Control Board and the Central Pollution Control Board, but I'm yet to see one in operation. So the sanitary pads remains a big controversial thing where people are objecting and some people are looking for solutions. There are other places in Northeast where I've seen it is a deep burial, and I think if there is nothing, then deep burial is far better than what it is being done. Because to be very frank, it is one of the biggest problem that the waste collectors face. When people mix up their sanitary pads, whether it is Huggies from the kids to adults, the waste picker doesn't want to further segregate the waste. In normal conditions, if there is a plastic, paper, and organics, they will segregate. But once sanitary pads are there, Huggies are there, they are very, very reluctant to do that. So more recently, there is a technology where we can manage, but segregation of the sanitary pads or menstrual hygiene stuff remains a big challenge. How it is to be done? It has been done in pretty smartly in the girls' hostel in Tinsukia, but in other places where it comes mixed from the residential areas, from the complexes, it is a huge problem.
Yeah, residential area is definitely a problem. Just I want to know, are there any kind of social audit which has been done in terms of various kind of project that has been taken in regarding solid waste management in Assam?
Social audit, I'm not aware.
Okay.
I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sanjay, can I just interject?
Sure.
I think on the issue of sanitary pads, as Nalini mentioned, there are a lot of movements happening at various levels in the country, and There are cities that are very active at it, and there are activists and people who are working on the ground on it. I think Mayuri is here, who has joined us, who kind of has worked very actively on this issue, and maybe Sanjay, you could ask her to share. But I feel this is also an area where you can't really push people to do something and forcefully change their perceptions. Of course, sustainable menstruation is the need of the hour, where you can ask people to switch from, you know, those 90% plastic laden pads to sustainable options like a cloth pad or a silicone cup. But I feel those are choices which you have to make personally, and definitely you can't push. So probably I or Nalini or Mayuri who's here, we may be comfortable in making that switch, but then if you pursue others, it's very much a choice and very much an issue which is related with comfort. And I mean, a lot of it's got like a total mindset shift to kind of switch to a sustainable option, because you have so many fears and stigmas attached. So I feel those stigmas need to be addressed to carry forward the movement of sustainable menstruation. And secondly, I feel at municipal level, there definitely has to be some connection made, because in every city, this has become an issue. And I feel across India, they're not very sustainable, treatment methodologies. An ideal way is that this should go to a biomedical incineration facility. But then we all know that those linkages don't work out in real time. One could be, these small scale incinerators being installed, but there is an issue with their, environmental grading, and whether are these systems, not hazardous? Do they comply to parameters, or do we even have incineration standards for these small scale, incinerators? So I feel a lot of work has to be again done in this area in terms of correct disposal of sanitary waste and diapers. Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Mayuri, if you would like to comment on this, I think this is pretty important, and maybe you can enlighten us with your thoughts.
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Mayuri. I'm from Tezpur in Assam, but currently in Kolkata. So I do agree that, like with Swati, because we do ideally want people to switch to sustainable options, but it is also a matter of choice. And as a menstrual health educator, I believe in informed choice, that all users should know that what are the products available. Unfortunately, whenever you look at most of the menstrual health programs in schools or any of them, they tend to focus on only pads, like the disposable ones, not the cloth pads. I really feel that when people are talking about menstrual health in schools or community, they should focus on the various range of products that's out there and leave it to the user to choose. So that is one way. And right now in Kolkata, we have been really thinking, I'm working on a school menstrual health project. And we have been really struggling with the issue of menstrual waste, because frankly, we are always talking about this statistics that women don't have access to sanitary pads. But I think if you look at some credible statistics from National Family Health Survey, you will see that in urban areas, the uptake of disposable sanitary pads, which are called hygienic options. I think even these terms also need to change, because the Family Health Survey terms these as hygienic and then cloth or anything else as unhygienic. I feel hygienic or unhygienic is a matter of how you use a product. So those things, of course, like that's another issue. So we have been really struggling, because in school level, there's a push from the government. They all want incinerators because the sweeper doesn't want, or whoever is the cleaner, they don't want to take the waste or would charge something extra. So there we have explored some options of incinerators which might adhere to a CPCB standards, but I know that we don't have a standard, something from the BIS. I'm aware that there's some sort of activism by certain alliances like Menstrual Health Alliance in India. They're trying to come up with a standard as such. They did come up with a new standard of disposable sanitary pads last year, which I think is not so much publicized. Like, it's quite detailed, because it asks producers to talk about, like, what do you mean when you say biodegradable? What is oxo-biodegradable? So they are talking about those, but those standards are really not adopted as much, because this is also new. So first, incinerator is still a nascent area. we are struggling. We would want people to switch as much as possible. I think I was telling Sanjay that in Kolkata or anyone or a state like Assam, it's so humid that cloth pads take a long time to, sometimes dry. So some women are quite discouraged to use it. Now the other option is menstrual cups. It takes some amount of time to adapt to it. I switched myself to a cup. It took me some time. So yes, it's an ongoing thing, because also menstruation is a taboo issue. It takes some time, but I'm glad that we are having these conversations now. And we're also happy to have alliances like Menstrual Health Alliance in India, which is talking about these menstrual waste part of it. So combined with, I think, citizen activism, right now in Kolkata, there is a campaign called Blood Safai, which is asking the municipality to, take care or try and do something about the menstrual waste, arrange something. So I think I would say that when like Nalini said that it's always not good to tell the bureaucrats to do this. I think along with that, we can go for solutions and maybe look at like models which are being followed in a way in Bangalore. I'm not sure, because my friends in Bangalore, they say that they segregate the sanitary pads and other bins, but in Kolkata, it doesn't happen. And I'm not so sure what happens in Bangalore ultimately, because I joined the discussion late. But it's a slow thing. And there are a couple of technologies available which are at present expensive and not really field tested much. We came across this smokeless incinerator in Kolkata, but it's not been so much field tested that we know that how it works out. So those questions are there. So yeah, it's a really evolving thing, because it's an issue which has been a taboo for so many years. And then we have movies like Padman, which promote sanitary pads, and we're only talking about products. We're not talking about the waste. So we have to, somewhere, I think, talk about the waste part also. And that's what I'm also currently trying to do, and trying to figure out what we can best do, if we can work on an advocacy with the government. Let's see how it works out.
Yeah,
I just wanted to share one observation we have. It's too small. We have not done a documentation. Probably we should do, because Bangalore segregate waste into 3 ways. The third waste goes into many of the apartments have already signed up with the biomedical waste people to take it away. So it costs about 22 to 23 rupees per kilo. It's very expensive. So in where we have done this Green the Red campaign, that is a campaign that started here, where in one of the apartments, the campaign was very successful. The cost of the sanitary waste disposal has come down. That very clearly shows people have shifted. And another story I would like to say, Tarahunise, it's a small village that we work just outside Bangalore. It has all the urban, facility, and the consumption pattern is like urban, but the facility or the infrastructure is rural. So that is also another issue. There we actually got a SHG to promote, the alternate material, so that it's a win-win situation for everyone. The actual cost of drainage cleaning has come down drastically in that village, because most of the drainage that was blocking was sanitary napkins. So these are the two, probably we have to write it up about it. And so there is an advantage for the city also to promote these kind of campaigns.
You must do it, Nalini. This is an award-winning story.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody would think that switching over to sanitary pads could lead to drastic change in drain cleaning costs.
Yeah.
This is quite something. Maybe while talking about the incinerator, sometimes we get stuck into the situation where probably while looking for the perfect solution, we are missing out on what is in the given circumstance that could be a workable solution. And this is where I say, until we find the perfect, let's manage it better with what we have. So whether it is a deep burial or a small incinerator with some amount of pollution control or a scrubber system into it, I would personally say that I would like to experiment with what is there and not wait until the perfect solution arrives, because a huge problem here. There are no further questions. I see 6 more chats. Basically, one says we need to design our own models that is region specific. and Agres Kavita, that's more sustainable. Not many questions actually. So with that, I must.
Sanjay, I have one question. This is
Please
Millie.
go ahead. Hi, Millie. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I have a question related to what do you call animal, dead animal. What is happening in Bangalore or Delhi or other cities? How are they processing, or dispose of the dead animal or their body part? And because there's nothing happening in Guwahati, and we do not know, the process. I am working with various activists, animal activists, and I just wanted to know how would we work together, or how could we pressurize the government to have some system. So just wanted to know if you know aware of the movement and what is happening on that area.
I will connect you to people who are here who are doing it. I'm not an expert here, but we have one the specific cemetery that is dedicated to the animal that is in Kengeri. So most of the people go there who are who love their dogs or pets that is passed away, and they go and use that facility. If you're talking about the dead dog on the street or the cattle on the street, we don't have a major solution. It comes under the veterinary department, but however, they put it on garbage collector, so it's often a challenge. Of course, if you go to the landfill, you will see that the dead animals have been brought there and put there, and in few days it is not there anymore. So that is the solution they have used it. But there is one electric cemetery in Bangalore dedicated to the animals.
So when you said it's not there anymore, that means somebody take the dead animal?
No, cemetery is there. They take
no. So say there's a cow died and somebody got it. And what happened to them? They burn it? I didn't still get it. Do they burn it, or somebody just take the body?
They take the body. The garbage collectors take the body. If it is a body that has no, linkages to any owner, if people who own it, they can use the cemetery. Cremation, actually, cremating. Yeah.
It would be great if you could connect me to some of the activists.
Absolutely.
We wanted to make this movement over here.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Milind. Like in Khanapara, we have a veterinary department. They take up like dead bodies, like for experiment, and they have a burial ground also. Maybe you can connect someone to the veterinary department in Khanapara.
Do you have any number? As far as I know, that there is no incinerator.
Yeah, they don't have incinerator, but yeah, I can connect you to someone. I'll let you know.
Yeah. I'm also sending you an email. Connect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
So with this final question, we come to the end of this session or today's session. Thank you so much, Swati, for sparing the time and enlightening with us on what is happening around the country. Nalini, as always, you have been brilliant. Thank you so much. And Anajori and Care Northwest Foundation is truly grateful to both of you and the participant for participating in this. And I will trouble you again. That's all I can say. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.